Are you ready to do good, feel good, and buy pie? Slice of Life, Food and Friends' annual Thanksgiving pie sale is back. It's the sweetest way and the easiest way to give back this holiday season. Every pie purchased provides one full day of free medically tailored meals to a neighbor living with serious illnesses like HIV, AIDS, or cancer. Order your pie by November 19th at sliceoflifedc.org. That's sliceoflifedc.org.
Today on CityCast DC, it is 4 a.m. We're catching up on election results. When I went to bed, the election was basically undecided, and now things are looking a whole lot less undecided. CityCast Priyanka Tulve and Julia Karen are here, and we're all sort of still processing what this means for our city, our country, and honestly, for all of us. Today is Wednesday, November 6th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Priyanka, Julia, how are we feeling? Let's just get into it.
That's such a loaded question. I went to bed at 10 p.m. I woke up at 3 a.m. We had prepped for this episode and for our newsletter coming out this morning, assuming that things were going to be undecided for a few days. I feel like I had mentally prepared for the possibility of a Trump win because I didn't want to be blindsided the way I was in 2016. And I guess I'm less blindsided, but still shell-shocked. At this point, the electoral map is looking very favorable towards Trump. Pennsylvania has gone to Trump. Georgia went to Trump. It is not looking like there is a path to victory for Vice President Kamala Harris. She canceled her speech at Howard University, and I am feeling shell-shocked.
The phrase disappointed but not surprised gets thrown around a lot. And I feel like this is an instance where that could not be more true. I see a therapist every Monday, and what I talked with my therapist about was managing anxiety around the outcome of this election. And what I had basically told my therapist was, I personally will probably be okay. Trump winning probably doesn't affect me a whole heck of a lot. But it does impact a ton of my friends in very serious and critical ways, to the point of saying that my friends should basically not exist. And that is something I cannot personally abide by. So how do you manage your anxiety in that moment? And essentially what he told me was, all you can control in this moment is yourself. What are you doing to be a good friend? What are you doing to be a good neighbor to people who need you? Which seems small and insignificant given what we've got. But sometimes that's kind of all you can do.
I feel like the neighbor bit is critical because DC is a city that will be thoroughly impacted by another President Trump, assuming that is what we are headed for right now. He has said he wants to take over the city. We ran an episode about this in July, and we actually reran it again earlier this week about all of the things that he has threatened to do if he becomes the president. He is bizarrely fixated on DC in a way that presidents usually aren't, which was pointed out by our guest, Janae Deal from Axios. He has kind of said that he wants to make an example of DC, probably because we are such a blue city. It's worth noting that DC voted 90% for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Across the board, all of like in every possible way that DC, Maryland, and Virginia could vote blue or in favor of progressive democratic values, they did this election. Every single way possible.
Maryland elected Angela Alsobrooks to the Senate. She's the first Black senator from that state. That's a huge dub.
And she defeated a 2-time Republican governor, Larry Hogan, who is very popular, who rejected Trump's endorsement of him. So like even our Republicans in the area were distancing themselves from Trump and still lost. Like in Virginia as well, right, Julia? All of the races that were close, that were tense, went blue.
Yeah. So Tim Kaine held on to a Senate seat.
Right.
That was one thing that people were keeping their eyes on. A lot of the House races that really mattered. In the 10th Congressional District, Suhas Subramaniam ran. This was for Jennifer Wexton's old seat. She stepped down because of a medical diagnosis. She has progressive supranuclear palsy. It's a disease that actually gets misdiagnosed as Parkinson's occasionally, and the Dems kept this seat. The challenger was this guy, Mike Clancy, who was Trump endorsed. In the 7th District at time of recording, it's pretty tight, but it's looking like Eugene Vindman is going to fend off Derek Anderson, who is another Trump-backed Republican. So in the burbs surrounding DC, if you want to talk about like neighborly and like insularity, there is an insularity of these are the people who we want representing us.
Yeah, I am not in DC right now. I'm in Virginia dealing with some family stuff. I'm like in Richmond, so like not Northern Virginia, like Virginia. And, you know, in looking for silver linings and things to be hopeful of, I have to shout out Virginia. Like it makes me feel a little good that they went for Harris. You know, I when I was growing up in Virginia, I never thought I'd see the day where it was not a red state. And that seems to be the trend. So, you know, there's not a lot for me to feel hopeful about in this moment, but I'm kind of clinging to the small things. And I think what we're seeing from the larger DMV area does kind of solidify that, you know, that there are folks here who hold some of the same values that I guess I would think would be universal for, you know, people who care about each other.
Yeah. And I mean, again, in DC, 90% is nearly universal. So I guess that is like, I hadn't even gotten to the point of looking for silver linings, but I appreciate that because I think it is what we're going to have to do for the next few years.
You know, there's the 5 stages of grief, which I feel like I woke up and I felt them all in one go. But part of the end of acceptance is having hope. And it is hard to find hope when stuff looks like this, especially when you're just trying to get over the acceptance stage.
Well, I think that we have an opportunity to sort of model what we're going to need for the next 4 years. I think we are heading into some dark, difficult times. And I think it benefits people like Trump when we don't have any hope, when we're like, well, we're hopeless. We are in complete despair. And so I think, you know, I'm taking the time that I need now to feel my feelings. And boy, do I have a lot of them, because we're going to need to go into the next 4 years with some sort of a plan of how we hold on to the things that unite us and the things that make us feel our humanity and the things that, like, you know, do bring us hope.
Let's be real, lawsuits are not fun. But with Christopher Nace and the trial lawyers at Paulson and Nace, at least they're a little easier. Paulson and Nace is a DC law firm in every sense of the word. It was founded here in 1979. Partner Chris Nace is a local who cares deeply about the DC community, even serving on the board of the local branch of the Living Classrooms Foundation in his free time. Nace and his associates, Samantha Peters, John Reese, and Maya Perry, handle medical malpractice, wrongful death, and other complex injury cases. And they don't just settle every case. They'll go to court. They'll fight for you. Paulson and Nace has even been recognized as one of Best Lawyers' best law firms. So if you have been hurt or lost a loved one because of someone else's mistake or negligence, call Paulson and Nace for a no-obligation consultation. Visit www.paulsonandnace.com or call 202-463-1999.
Who says you have to start New Year's resolutions in the new year? There is no time like the present to embark on a new goal, like learning a new language. The Alliance Francaise of Washington, D.C. offers language courses tailored to every level. The winter session starts on December 4th, and if you enroll by November 8th, you'll receive a $20 discount. So if you've ever dreamed of ordering your morning cafe in perfect French or discussing art and history with ease, now is your chance. But it's not just about the language courses. A membership with the Alliance Francaise of Washington, D.C. brings you into a vibrant community that celebrates all things French. You get exclusive access to cultural events, wine tastings, film screenings, and more. Visit www.francedc.org to start your journey. And don't forget, sign up by November 8th and you'll get $20 off tuition when you enroll.
I do think we need to talk about some of the things, like some of the specifics that could happen in DC as a result of a Trump presidency, for no other reason than the only way to prepare for something and figure out a plan of action is to voice it, right? So one of the things that people are worried about is that there's going to be massive turnover in terms of federal employment. He's talked about significantly downsizing federal government, potentially getting rid of the Department of Education entirely. Project 2025, which Trump says he's not subscribed to, but a lot of people close to him wrote it. So, it seems like a gray area. Basically says that the executive branch should swoop in and take command of a bunch of stuff and get rid of a whole bunch of agencies, which not only impacts the somewhere around 300,000 federal employees who live in DC, but also would significantly impact our local economy by changing the demographics of the city and literal population, like how many people are here.
Yeah, there's that base level. And I think people, if you ask economists to get nerdy economical for 5 seconds at a weird time to get nerdy economical, Trump has stated that he wants to implement tariffs potentially across the board on all imported goods. DC is an expensive city to live in. Straight up. My electric scooter was made in China. So if you think about that car or electric scooter that you got that's from China, if you lob a tariff on that, that makes that thing that is kind of a luxury-ish item, but maybe a necessity for people, way more expensive.
Totally. Looking at crime and prosecution, the president does have the power to unilaterally call the National Guard. The president appoints DC's federal prosecutor. The president nominates judges for DC. All of these are posts we have to be aware of because he could nominate right-wingers and quote-unquote tough on crime folks, basically Trump loyalists that would then have a lot of sway in the way that our city governs itself and responds to crime. And then there's Congress.
There's Congress. There's the House races. The big thing here that Sinead mentioned is that if Republicans are going to meddle, this is really where they're going to do a lot of the work. James Comer is the committee chair of the DC committee, basically, that micromanages DC already and approves, disapproves stuff. People might remember when DC was looking to change its criminal code. James Comer was the guy that said, wait, not so fast. He's got a lot of power now if Republicans hold the House and get a trifecta. And there's a bunch of things that they could attack. They could attack dumb things like cameras and right turn on red. There's dumb stuff. And then there's very, very real stuff, like abortion. DC abortion rights are probably in trouble because DC isn't a state. They can't enshrine it in a constitution for protection. Maryland voted yes on Initiative 1, which basically enshrined the right to abortion in their constitution. It was like a backstop, basically, for something like this happening. And so if you're a DC resident, it's possible that you might have to go to Maryland to get an abortion.
Can I just add something there, which is that, so I kind of got my start working at Planned Parenthood and the abortion rights movement. People like to gloss over that, oh, well,
I'll just go from DC to Maryland. Abortions are expensive. And if you are someone who is low income or you don't have the money for an abortion, going from DC to Maryland might be cost prohibitive. And abortions are also time sensitive. And so I just don't want, like, it's easy to say that, but then when you really break it down into what that looks like for somebody that might have other kinds of financial or time constraints, it's very prohibitive. And so it's one of those ways that, like, it might sound like it's not that big of a deal, but when you're actually experiencing it, it can actually be a very big deal.
Yeah. The other thing to note here is that, like, DC's hospital systems could be told by the Department of Health, essentially, if you have a woman who has a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy, if they have to carry said fetus to term, right? DC's hospital systems and doctors could be sued if abortion rights get overturned in DC. So that is something to, like, keep your brain on for.
Yeah. Other things they could come at us over are DC has laws that allow for non-citizen voting, something that has been a flashpoint for Republicans generally. They could try to change up the way that DC approaches its cannabis market, could try to reject some of DC's environmental policies. I mean, we have a blue DC citizenry, and therefore we have a blue DC council, and a lot of the laws that they want to pass and consistently try to pass are progressive and are different from what House Republicans would want. So DC needs to come up with a strategy at this point. We asked Janae this in our episode, and he'd said at the time that DC does not have a great strategy to go to battle against this kind of assault from Congress. And if it's a trifecta, that will be something that DC has to learn how to contend with. President Trump does not like Mayor Bowser. So these are all things that are going to have to be worked out.
I would also add, he doesn't just not like her. He has a problem with Black women. Like, that's part of it. Like, I think that any time that we talk about how he responds to Bowser, we need to, like, make it clear, because he's made it very clear that he has a problem with her, not just as an elected official, but as a Black woman specifically. And so I think, like, on top of all the other points that you all made, as a Black woman, I'm not looking forward to the way that I know he is going to speak about her in public. I just, like, I didn't care for it then. I'm not looking forward to it now. It's misogynistic, it's racist, and here we are having it again. So not great.
100%. I do think that in light of this somehow, once again, earth-shattering national news, it can get easy to lose sight of the local news that also happened on Tuesday. Should we run through some of that?
Yeah, we can be snappy and quick about it.
Okay, well, I-83 passed. That is the initiative to implement ranked choice voting in DC and open up primaries to the 70,000 registered independents in DC. So basically allowing them to vote in the Democratic or Republican, they would have to pick one, Democratic or Republican primaries. That's basically because, I guess we've said DC is such a blue city that our primaries are often where our actual elections happen. And so this initiative would allow independents to participate in that race that happens in the summer. Of course, now that it's passed, DC Council needs to find a way to fund it. So that's going to be the next obstacle, and we're going to have more coverage on that for you coming up later this week and early next week about what to expect with that initiative.
All right. So we've got results from council races. Brooke Pinto in Ward 2 won re-election unopposed. Janice Lewis-George won re-election in Ward 4 unopposed. Vince Gray's old seat in Ward 7, Democrat Wendell Felder won. That was the seat that originally had something like 10 candidates for it plus in that primary and it was a weird duke out battle, kind of wild. And the one that we have all been waiting for, Trayon White won re-election, basically despite being federally charged with bribery, and the DC Council is considering removing him from office. So it's going to kick off this weird cycle that Tom Sherwood mentioned in our live episode of the council could kick Trayon off, but he could go on to nominate himself for the special election and then get voted back on. And then the council could vote him off again. And it could be a whole cycle, which is kind of nuts.
You did that so quickly and eloquently, Julia. It was like you were doing one of our speed run episodes for the end of the month.
My brain works in mysterious ways at 4 a.m. What can I say?
Yeah, well, I mean, you are a lot more on than I am right now, Julia. And kudos.
To be fair, that's probably because I didn't sleep and doom scrolled Twitter to see stuff unfolding in real time. So who really is on top of it right now?
Yeah. What did you see in terms of, obviously Kamala Harris was planning to speak at Howard University, canceled that speech in light of how the night was going. Did you see any reaction from people there online on Twitter? How people who were because there were long lines. We were there earlier in the day and saw long lines of people outside Howard waiting to get in.
Yeah. So actually earlier this morning, last night, time is a flat circle. I was at Howard China to get mumbo sauce for an upcoming episode where we're taste testing mumbo sauce. So get ready for that. But people were really excited. All of Georgia Avenue was shut down. People are getting their carry out and their takeout, and they're waiting to go see Kamala Harris and hang out with her. And now the vibes are very, very, very bad. People left. It's 4 a.m. at time of recording. People basically left roughly 2 hours ago, and Kamala's delayed speaking at Howard, even though that's her, election HQ. So the vibes are decidedly bad.
Yeah, I guess the other thing to watch out for is that a lot of the city had boarded up in anticipation of the election. I saw a CVS on 14th Street, continuing to finish boarding up just yesterday, yesterday evening, Tuesday evening, they were adding boards. So I think the city is going to continue to be on knife's edge for the rest of the week in terms of reaction, even though we have an answer earlier than we anticipated, or potentially have an answer earlier than anticipated. The city is still going to be on edge.
I mean, I'm on edge. I think the city is on edge. We feel on edge. This episode is on edge. I think everyone listening is on edge. The vibes aren't good. And, I wish I had some words of wisdom kind of rounding out this episode, but I do think we're heading into challenging times. And there's this reporter who I love, Sarah Kendozer, who has this line. She actually hit us with it back in 2016. If you can't be brave, be kind. And it's something that I guess I'm feeling that in DC, thinking about the way that the DMV area voted. I do think that we are lucky to be someplace where it feels like, for the most part, we are surrounded by kind neighbors who share our values. What else can you really hope for, I guess, in these times?
I thought that was very wise, Bridget. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. My Bay early sleep-addled brain could not have come up with that, so thank you.
We'll see if we can do better for you all on Friday. On Fridays, we always break down the biggest local stories of the week. So this will definitely be on the agenda. So tune in for our roundup on Friday.
Well, Priyanka, Julia, I'm happy that we could have this time to sort of process our feelings and think about what's next. And I'm excited that we have the opportunity to keep doing that together for the city. And so I hope folks join us back here on Friday morning for more updates. And I'm excited that at least in these challenging times, CityCast DC is here to sort of go through it with all of you all together. So let's just keep doing that.
Agreed.
Thank you, Bridget.
That is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, text a friend who is drowning in despair from the election results, just like we are. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.